You think the scariest part of a road trip is getting lost? Try realizing the people you meet might not want you to leave alive. I was 21, headed to Wyoming with friends for what was supposed to be the adventure of a lifetime. But instead of climbing sandstone cliffs under an endless blue sky, I found myself standing in a gas station with a knife pointed at me, and a choice that meant the difference between walking away or disappearing forever. Stay with me until the end, because this isn't just a story about survival, it's a warning. It was the summer after my junior year at college. A group of us had piled into my old Honda Civic and driven out to Wyoming's Red Desert for a climbing trip. The plateau looked untouched by time-jagged layers of sandstone against an endless sky. But by the third day, the heat hit us harder than expected. Our water bottles were bone dry. The gas gauge hovered just above empty. The road ahead stretched into miles of absolute nothing. My buddy Mark muttered, "If we break down out here, no one's coming." By the time we spotted a cluster of buildings, barely a town, I thought we were saved. A single diner, a faded motel, and one gas station that looked like it hadn't seen life in decades. But desperate people don't get to be picky. I left my friends with the car and stepped inside. The place smelled of motor oil and dust, the kind that sticks to your clothes. Behind the counter was a wiry man in his 40s. His eyes darted past me toward the parking lot, then back.
"Pump 3, I said, pulling out my wallet.
"Pump 3, I said, pulling out my wallet. His smile was wrong. Too wide.
Too forced.
Too forced. Cash only. A card machine's down. Something in my gut twisted, but I handed over the bills. Okay, as he counted, a second man stepped out from a back door. Bigger, broader. And he didn't speak, just stood there, blocking the exit with folded arms. The clerk's voice dropped. "You're not from around here, are you?" I tried to laugh it off, just passing through. The bigger man smirked. "Oh, that's what we like. Travelers." The clerk slid something across the counter. At first I thought it was paper, then I realized it was a knife.
My pulse thundered in my ears.
My pulse thundered in my ears. "Wallet, watch, phone," the clerk snapped. "Put them here." I glanced at the door. My friends were still outside, clueless. If I resisted, would they be next? So I set my phone down, my wallet. His eyes lit up, a predator savoring the trap. And then instinct took over. As the bulky man stepped forward, I shoved the knife off the counter. It clattered to the floor. In that split second of distraction, I bolted. "Go, go," I screamed as I dove into the car. The engine roared, tires screeching. Behind us came shouting, boots scraping pavement. Then bang. A gunshot. The side mirror exploded in a shower of glass. My heart felt like it would rip out of my chest as we sped into the desert, dust spiraling behind us.
We drove 4 miles in silence until finally, blessedly, we reached the highway. No one spoke. No one had to.
We drove for miles in silence until finally, blessedly, we reached the highway. No one spoke. No one had to. Out. Later that night at a motel hours away, I emptied my pockets. That's when I found a crumpled receipt I hadn't noticed earlier. On the back, in rushed handwriting, were 4 chilling words: "Don't ever come back." I realized something that night. Out in the middle of nowhere, where cell service is a joke and roads stretch on forever, people can disappear without a trace. And sometimes the ones you think are just strangers behind a counter are hunters waiting for prey. If you were standing in that gas station faced with those men, what would you have done? Fought back or handed everything over? Drop your answer in the comments. I'll be reading them. Make sure you subscribe because I've got more stories like this one where survival comes down to one choice. And trust me, and the next one is even darker.
I was on a road trip, just 4 hours of desert highway ahead of me. I'd done drives like this before, but this stretch of New Mexico felt different, emptier, lonelier. The horizon seemed to swallow the world. The sun was dipping low, bleeding orange and red into the desert sky, and my car hummed steadily along the asphalt. Then I saw it, an old wooden sign leaning to one side. It was cracked, sun-bleached, its black letters barely visible. Scenic route, 12 miles. I don't know why I took it. Maybe it was boredom, maybe curiosity, but I turned onto the narrow dirt road, dust spiraling behind my tires. At first, it was peaceful. The desert stretched around me, dotted with sagebrush and the occasional twisted tree. The radio murmured softly. For a moment, I thought, this isn't so bad. Then the road narrowed. Potholes rattled my steering wheel. The dirt darkened like it hadn't been touched in years. Shadows grew long across the ground as dusk crept in. That's when I noticed my cell signal had vanished. Still, I told myself not to panic. I kept driving, hoping to reconnect with the highway soon. And then I saw something, a figure, standing in the middle of the road. I slowed. It looked like a man, tall, thin, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. He didn't move, didn't wave, just stood there like he'd been waiting for me. I rolled my window down a crack. "You okay?" I called out, my voice trembling even though I tried to sound calm. No response. I eased the car forward and my headlights swept over him. That's when I realized his face was wrong. His skin looked too tight. His eyes didn't reflect the light. They absorbed it. Every instinct screamed at me to drive. I slammed the gas. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd hit him. But when I glanced in the rearview mirror, the road behind me was empty. My pulse hammered. I drove faster, the car rattling over every bump. The road twisted unnaturally, turns where there shouldn't be any. Then another figure. This one on the side of the road. Then another further up, and another. By the next bend, they were everywhere. Men and women perfectly still watching me. Faces blurred in the fading light. Heads slowly turning to follow my car as I passed. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. My mouth went dry. It felt like a gauntlet of shadows. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the dirt path opened back up onto pavement. Relief hit me like a wave. I pressed the gas, desperate to leave that place. But just before the road curved back to the highway, I checked my mirror one last time. Every single figure stood at the edge of the road, perfectly aligned, watching me leave. When I reached civilization, I pulled into a diner and just sat there shaking. My phone buzzed back to life, notifications flooding in, but I couldn't look. All I could see were those faces, or lack of them, and the way their heads turned in unison. To this day, I don't know what I saw on that detour. Locals whisper about old rituals, leaving scars on the land, places you were not supposed to go after dark. All I know is, I'll never take the scenic route again.
I had been travelling through Europe that summer, chasing coastlines and cheap hostels. Croatia was supposed to be one of the highlights. A country of turquoise seas, ancient towns, and endless night markets. My last night there was supposed to be uneventful. Just one more walk along the Adriatic before catching an early bus out. The town I stayed in was beautiful by day, but at night the alleys became mazes of shadows. Old stone walls rose up on either side. The streets so narrow that even the moonlight barely reached the ground. I wandered aimlessly, half distracted by the sound of waves echoing through the distance. That's when I noticed I wasn't alone. A group of men stood clustered near a corner, smoking and talking in low voices. Their eyes followed me as I walked past. I tried not to look back, but something about their silence when I passed chilled me to the bone. I quickened my pace. The streets twisted and forked, and soon I realized I was lost. The market sounds had faded, replaced by nothing but my footsteps. And then, more footsteps. Behind me. I turned. The men from before were there, following, not rushing, just walking, keeping their distance. But every time I turned a corner, they turned it too. The air felt heavier with each step. My heartbeat drummed in my ears. I tried ducking into side streets, weaving through the labyrinth of alleys. But no matter where I turned, they were still there, smiling now. One of them finally spoke. his voice thick with accent. "Tourist, where are you going?" I muttered something about my hostel, though I knew they didn't care about my answer. Another man chuckled, tossing his cigarette aside. "Come, we show you. Better way." I could feel the walls pressing in, the cobblestones, uneven under my shoes. My gut screamed trap. But if I ran, would they chase me? Then I noticed something. Ahead, through a narrow archway, there was light, warm yellow spilling out from what looked like a bar or tavern. I forced my legs to move faster, not quite running, but close. The men's voices grew louder, sharper. I didn't look back. I burst through the archway into the bar, where locals were laughing and drinking. The moment I stepped inside, everything stopped. The chatter, the laughter. Every head turned toward me. The men behind me followed in, grinning, and in Croatian, they started speaking quickly to the bartender. I couldn't understand the words, but I didn't need to. The tone was enough. Threatening, familiar. The bartender's face didn't change, but his eyes flicked to me, then back to them. He poured a drink, slid it down the bar, and in a low voice said, "Sit, don't move, don't leave until I tell you." I obeyed. My hands trembled as I wrapped them around the untouched glass. Minutes stretched like hours. The men leaned against the wall, muttering, waiting, watching. Finally, the bartender clapped his hands sharply. Two massive men emerged from a back room, bigger than any bouncers I'd ever seen. They exchanged a few words in Croatian, and just like that, the group that had been stalking me was ushered out into the night. Not gently. The bartender leaned close. His voice was quiet but firm. "You walk alone here, you disappear. This is not a place for tourists after dark. You understand?" I nodded, my mouth dry, my chest tight. He called me a cab himself and didn't leave the doorway until I was safely inside. As the car pulled away, I saw the group of men again, standing at the end of the street, watching the cab drive off. Their expressions promised that if I had chosen differently, I would not have made it back. I didn't sleep that night, and when I finally boarded the bus out of Croatia the next morning, I swore I'd never forget the way the bartender's words clung to me like a curse. "You walk alone here, you disappear."
Don't forget to subscribe because there are more stories like this, waiting to be told.